Okay, so this is the second part of this video, and what we're going to be looking at here is how to use basic shapes to block out this sword. So when we talk about a primitive blockout, what we're talking about is using these primitive shapes up here, which you can also access up here from the polygon primitives. And basically the point of it is for us to get an idea of the basic shape around it. Now the basic shapes I'm going to use here are going to be cylinders, and maybe a few cubes, maybe a sphere at the end there, just to sort of get this shape. So I'm going to go ahead, create this cylinder here. I'm going to actually reduce down the number of edges on here. So whenever you create a shape, if you go over here to channel box, you should see this input here that says polycylinder 1. And this basically tells us all the inputs that we have for creating this cylinder. So here we have subdivision axis 20. Now for a blade, that's going to make it very blunt. So I'm actually going to turn this down to 6 and just see how that looks. Now I might even go 8 actually. Yeah, that'll work just fine. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flatten this out. And so that's how we're going to get this sort of bladed look. Now obviously I'm going to have to rotate this by 90 degrees on the x-axis. So as you can see here, that's the x-axis that I'm rotating it on there. So I'm going to go 90, and that's going to flatten it out there. And then I'm just going to move it across like so. And then shrink it down on the x-axis again to try and get it looking a bit better there. I'm going to pull it up a bit. You can see that it's looking a bit blunt again, so I'm going to flatten it out so it gets that sharper edge there. And now I'm going to tap to go back, tap spacebar here or click on here to come back to this 4 view here. If I hover my mouse in any one of these viewports, it'll make that the main view. So I'm just now going to stretch this up until it's about close to the end there. Now to get this point, what I'm going to do is now start talking and looking a little bit at what makes up this mesh. So every 3D mesh, if I hold down the right mouse button, is made up of an edge, vertex, and faces. So vertices are these little dots that exist here. Edges are the lines in between those dots, and faces or polys are the solid sort of face that exists between them as a polygon that allows us to actually even see this sort of 3D shape. Because if we didn't have that, it wouldn't look very three-dimensional at all. We wouldn't have any light or materials bouncing off. It would just be, you know, just dots and coordinates. So what I'm going to do is right click and hold, go to vertex mode, select this center vertex here by left clicking on it, press W on the keyboard to move, and then move this up. I'm going to go back to my top view here to see how long that point needs to be, and there we go. And that's the very start of our blade. So the next one, I'm going to do that same step again just for the handle there. So I'm going to create a cylinder. I'm going to go over here to my channel box, go to poly inputs. I'm going to change that to 8 as well because I want to keep this as low poly as I can until we absolutely have to start subdividing it. I'm going to shrink it down so it's a little bit thinner. I'm going to rotate it again 90 degrees on that axis. And then I'm going to scale it across. And I'm going to flatten it down on the z-axis as well. There's local z-axis, it's world y-axis. And then bring that up here and just do my best to line those two up. And this is where I start looking at my side view here to make sure that those two are pretty close to each other. And I can see it's a bit wide, so again, going to bring it in. Now you'll notice that it gets a little bit thinner towards the edge. We will address that later. For now, I just want to get the basic sort of shape in here though. So I'm quite happy to leave that. Next shape I'm going to do is just going to use the cube for that. Because again, we'll get these points a little bit later. So I'm going to shrink that down, stretch it across, so it's the full length there, and then move it up like so, just so it intersects there. And then down here, there's a number of things I could do. If I just wanted a basic shape here, I could just put that sort of shape here. I could use a sphere, just for this end one here. But I'm not going to. I am going to use a cube. And then the next lesson, when we start looking at edge loops and bevels and things, we'll look at how we can get more of a rounder sort of shape. Because even though that will give us the shape we want, it's got a lot of polys and it's very hard to start moving those and reshaping those. It's just going to be really hard to get the shape that we want without accidentally breaking it. And it will ruin the topology. So I'm going to instead just start with a cube. and later on we will look at how we can round off this cube using the smooth, bevel, and edge loop tools. So I'm just going to put that there, and that's all I really wanted to look at in this lesson. I just wanted to make sure I got the proportions right, make sure I've got that sort of all shaped there nicely and everything. And in the next lesson, what we'll look at is how we can start using the edge loop tool to get more defined shapes in this.